days, but I'm from Liberty City, so my perspective is different because, you know, I just used to hear stories with my grandma growing up in Liberty City or in Miami, just seeing the history, how the Bahamians came to, you know, South Florida and kind of build South Florida, you know, just hearing stories down the line. But how I got introduced to art was really starting from, like, my grandma, you know, her sewing clothes. Because back then in schools, the curriculum was sewing and home economics and stuff like that. And we don't have that these days, unfortunately, but, you know, just seeing that, and she still do that to this day. You know, the more older I got, the more I realized, like, yo, my grandma was the foundation of me just doing what I'm doing today. And you mentioned earlier about Mr. Humes. It's crazy because how I really got introduced to art was me going to school in Barbara Goldman on the west side of Miami, which is like Miami Lakes area. He was a black man teaching art. And, you know, me coming from Liberty City, we don't really see too many, how you say it, you don't really see too many individuals, especially black men, teaching the form of art. So I was very in tune with getting into art, you know what I'm saying? So once I seen that, he the one that introduced me to Art Basel in 2013, 2012. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna just go. And I just ended up just seeing the Basquiat's, the Pablo Picasso, all that stuff. And that's kind of really introduced me into photography and the person I am today.
Since we in Liberty City, we gonna stay there for a moment. Y'all know I'm a graduate of Miami Northwestern, so we just gonna do this.
Bull Nation.
Because the African Heritage Cultural Arts Center is an epicenter of art in Miami. Shout out to Mr. Davis. And such a beautiful space. Miami Northwestern High School Performing and Visual Arts Center, PAVAC, that magnet program, is the first conservatory-style magnet arts program in Miami-Dade County. New World School of the Arts was born out of Miami Northwestern. That is not a history that's talked about. So I actually want Michelle Murray to weigh in. Michelle Murray is also my former dance teacher at Miami Northwestern. I'm a dance dropout, kind of, but once a dancer, always a dancer is what she's about to say. But I would love for you to talk, especially like within the education framework, right? Because we love to talk about access and the pipeline, and you have seen a world of it, from Northwestern to now leading the dance program at Miami-Dade College Kendall campus. So can you speak to the performing arts in Miami-Dade, and especially access for youth?
It's interesting. So my connection to Miami goes way back than most people actually know. Where's Mr. Hardiman, Commissioner? I can't believe you came up here and didn't say hello to me, but that's okay. I'm gonna call you out.
He was Mr. Northwestern when she
Yes, and he was coming to my classroom trying to get those legs together. But my connection to Miami goes really, it goes far, far, far back. So my grandfather actually worked for Pan Am and bought a house here in Miami in like 1962. My aunt still lives in that house in Opelika right now. So I was always coming, my family always lived here. I was born in Georgia, I lived in Texas. I moved to Miami at 13 years old. Studied with Edwin Holland and Gail McPhee at the time were in my class. Knew that I wanted to dance from very early on and continued in that path. Thank God I was able to make it on that path and stay on the clear path. And later on, started teaching at Miami Northwestern Senior High School, where I also graduated from as the first graduating class of New World School of the Arts. It wasn't always downtown.
Yep.
That part. It wasn't always downtown. And that's not to diss New World, but that is to say that the mother and the direction and the foundation, the foundation and the structure, because in order to have a foundation, in order to have a structure, you must have a very clear and firm foundation. And that came out of Miami Northwestern Senior High School on 71st Street and Northwest 12th Avenue. So that was Veronica Swindell. In case you all don't know, let's call her name, Veronica Swindell. And she was very clear about the direction that the school needed to go in. My mother was on the hiring committee of Danny Lewis. So when people come in and they start having these conversations, and I'm like, no. And I have to say, no, it's not that. That's not what it is. I'm not even sure that Danny Lewis knows that I know that, but he does now. So no secrets. Transparency. So that was, that's a bit of the foundation of New World and how the structure came to be. There were a group of people that danced, sang, did theater. Mr. Humes was there. Mr. Humes was even at the Cultural Arts Center, African Heritage Cultural Arts Center. Before, he was at Barbara Goldman's. He was my sister's art teacher. So all of these things were already in play at the time. I started teaching there in 1998, I think, 1998. And I stayed there for a bit and then decided, okay, it's time to move on and go to graduate school. Went to graduate school at FIU with Florida, at the time, was African New World Studies, which is now the Africana Studies program. My mentor at that time, and still is Dr. Carol Boyce Davies and Linda Spears Bunton, phenomenal women inside of these spaces. Carol Boyce Davies now works at Cornell University, and she ran that program. So that program was very instrumental inside of how I continue to navigate and create space, black space inside of Miami, inside of white space, and transform white space into black space, and not really being concerned about not really being concerned, selecting words, not really being concerned about what people are thinking, but what needs to happen. What needs to happen. So this idea that Northwestern is just a space on the side, that they just happen to be doing these things, that's a level of erasure that we really need to pay attention to. We really need to pay attention to that. How are we going to navigate these spaces and claim what we already own, what we already have? We own this already. We don't need permission to do the work that is already ours to do. We don't need the access of white social construct to do the work that is blackness. We are the majority. It was 29 of us. It was only 3 of them. 29 is a majority. The 29 black Bahamians that made it a city, before it was a city, they were already here in the city, and they needed us. So yeah, lots of beautiful, talented people that come out of that school, out of that space.
That is a perfect place to now take us to the next part of this conversation. So our foundation, the history, where we're at tonight, the organization that we've partnered with, MoCAAD, the histories that are part of Miami, the histories that are alive right now, we're making history tonight. You are a part of this history as well. And how do we move forward? What is the city we want to live in, right? So what does the art look like in the city of the future here in Miami? Little Haiti, many of you have already heard many different things. You know, the fastest gentrifying neighborhood in the United States. Part of that is because of climate change, something called climate gentrification. So thinking about these things, look around you and look at this space. And I say this primarily to all the black folks here. Look around you and think about what this space means to you. Is this a space you want to have in the future? Because it's not guaranteed unless we really invest ourselves into making sure it stays ours and that we are giving to it, right? If we want it to give to us, if we value these kinds of programs, we value what's here tonight, we also have to invest in it with our time, with our dollars, with our talents, whatever it is that we have. And if you support black culture as a non-black person, the same is asked of you as well. So moving on from these wonderful introductions and this foundation and history that was shared by our panel, I want to ask, where do you see the future of Miami going from this point forward, with all the challenges that we do have facing us, and maybe coming from different perspectives. Ludlow, you work in the curatorial and the gallery sector. Aaron as an artist, also Edouard as an artist, Michelle as a visual and performing artist. Where do you see us in the future?
Well, I'll take a stab at it first. I'm always an optimistic person. Even though I think the conditions of black people in this country has gotten worse. I think white folks are kind of losing it. And when you look at the reaction of the whole country to critical race theory, for example, it says to me that we're not moving forward, right? However, because I am a humanist and I believe in the possibility of growth and heaven on earth, I think that the arts are very important in really keeping our entire community aware of the divinity of humanity. And so I'm going to say on this that I think the possibility for change is possible. And the art space is one of those spaces where there can be some open discussion about issues that white folks need to get over. You know, I did a very big show in Fort Lauderdale called Roots of the Spirit. And one of the reasons why I focused on the spiritual piece is because black people are just amazing spiritual beings, you know. We come with so much ingenuity and so much swag and so much tumbao and so much spiritual power that, you know, I think the world, as it changes, because my view is that we're going to be facing some really catastrophic environmental issues in the near future. And I think Africa is going to become a very important continent in the planet. And one of the things that distinguishes us as a people is our ability to produce positive culture no matter what happens. Because in this country, I don't see how black people could have survived without culture, without music and dance, you know, without visual arts. We're now just being recognized as being important contributors of visual culture. But that makes me feel that, you know, there is a possibility for an optimistic future.
I think it's tough, right? Because, you know, like you said, it's changing. I've seen Miami come from not having like galleries and stuff like that into like we having galleries everywhere. We got the design district and stuff like that, but I think we gotta get more knowledgeable in the politics perspective. You know, we have to know about these laws that they put it in, because down the line, they put in laws right now that we don't know about. You know, we got to start in with that. And this is besides the art, you know. But I feel like with the art perspective, I feel like we need to get together more. You know, I see a lot of, don't get me wrong, it's a lot of diversity, it's cool. But I feel like the only thing that's really stopping us is our own. We got to come together as far as the collaborations in the art, not dissing one another, you know what I'm saying? And I see too much of that. So and that's my perspective. But as far as change, that's really pretty much what I feel like we got to come together and really, and that's cliche, but we got to really come together because there's always a divide, because it starts with us. And yeah. And we can't hate one another. That's the key thing. I see too much of that every day. You know, when I step out the house, it's really self-hate. So we got to start within ourselves. Yeah.
I've been put in situations in my life which have left me perplexed. I've been invited very recently. I'm in this country, and I'm in like a middle of Little Haiti, and I thought that my aim was to okay, place the Caribbean, place Haiti within the Caribbean, place the Caribbean within the United States. And I've realized that there's a lot more going on in this country that has to be addressed. I've been invited to Kentucky, to a very, very nice school called Center College, and it's in a very small town called Denville. And this is my first, my first foray into, I don't even know what to call it, is it the real America? What is it? Kentucky. Anyways, so I'm there, and it's 1,000 students school, and the day I arrived, they take me, they said, oh, it's interesting, that we should see that. And I said, what is it? A Civil War reenactment. And I said, well, that's interesting. Let's go and see that. So they take me there, and evidently they are like people in costumes, like Confederate, Union. Of course, like a flurry of widows, like Civil War widows dressed in black. And I said, what's going on here? So, nothing much was going on, but there was a small museum on the site. So I go into the museum, and I realize, I get the story of that particular battle, which was literally the first battle of the Civil War. And it explains very clearly that in 3 hours, more than 8,000 young kids, because people don't send old people to war. You understand? They send, like the disposable ones, like the young ones. So, I said 8,000 people in this kind of environment. The city of Denville has what? Maybe 9,000 people? What's going on? What are they defending? So, I looked at the situation. Then they convert the university where I am into a field hospital. So they take all the main, the butchered kids, the ones that were alive, back to school, and they were still fighting within the hospital. They were shooting. I said, what could provoke, this kind of, hatred? So I was musing on that, and the next day, they invited me to different classes, and my first question to these students was, could they tell me on which side of this conflict their families were? Okay? Silence. Total silence. I said, you must know on which side you were. If you were Union, if you were Confederate, what were you? What was your family involved with? Silence. I said, this is outrageous. You can, and then I asked them, oh, from where are you? What kind of stock are you? Where do you come from? Originally, Oh, north of England, south of France, da-da-da-da-da. They knew all about that, which was probably 200 years prior. I said, how come you don't know on which side your family was in the conflict? They were, and they were looking at me as if I was something out of Mars, So I said, this is, you are university students and you ought to know. This is, there was a war next to you. Your school was part of that history. You should, at least try to know. Anyways, the next day it was drama. They all came with their stories. So the whole thing got more complicated in the sense that I asked, why the South hated Lincoln so much. And the first answer, of course, silence again. And then, finally somebody, raised their hands. Oh, he wanted to take our property. I said, but this is a capitalist country. And then I shut off myself because I didn't realize that was not what we were talking about. They were talking about the fact that, Lincoln wanted to steal their slaves. I said, are you crazy, you guys? What kind of response is that? Anyways, I've decided to start, first of all, learning myself about this whole history, which is very dramatic, and, very reminiscent of what's happening today in this country. Of course, back then, they were talking about, the southern states, as rebellious. What do we call what's happening, what happened in Washington recently? Of course, it's a rebellion. I mean, like, I'm listening to all of these words, and I'm making, you know, like, connections to this, and I realize that this country has to get over this thing and really understand what happened. Because, you know, like, I mean, of course, academics says, yes, the basis of the Civil War in the United States is the question of slavery. And, you know, like, I mean, today, you know, like, they're still discussing, I mean, like, you know, like, the general population is not aware of that detail. You understand? They don't understand it. You know, I mean, you know, like, and it's still, you know, like, the underlying or the, you know, like, the backdrop of politics, economics, social, you know, like, injustice. Everything in this country goes back to that moment when, you know, like, they decided that all humans are humans and they cannot be put into slavery. So at one point I told one of the girls that was talking to me about that, and I said, listen, I hope one day I get enough money so I can buy you, you know, I mean, and you'll see how much you'll like it when I put you to work. I mean, I'm sure.
Well, the bottom line is until white people in America come to terms with slavery and the
They
fact
have
that
to-
it was,
yes.
they're going to have a hard time. What we're doing now is not the right thing in terms of
What we're doing is
not
the right-
talking about it.
What we're doing is the right thing, but also there's academics that are, I heard on the radio, and I have to find out who it was, that tabulated the Bureau of what do you call it, patents, was open right after the Civil War. Okay, so this lady sat
Bureau
there,
of what?
the Bureau of Patents, people that invent.
Yeah, but Edward, this is what I'm saying
Yeah.
is that right now in this country, people do not want to talk about slavery.
Well, we have to talk
Well,
about
I'm just saying that until they deal with that, right, they're going to continue to have a problem, right? Because I also think that's one of the reasons why the country's in decline. It has a lot to do with the fact that they have it wrong about race. White supremacy is not correct, right?
Absolutely not.
So given that, I'm just saying that that's something they're going to have to learn to deal with, right? And go ahead, sorry.
No, and I was going to say, just in the meantime,
what's in the meantime.
we're going to talk about Black art future in Miami as well.
There we go.
Pushing the culture forward.
And
Yes.
I would love for Michelle Murray to weigh in on,
Yeah.
you know, when we talk about the future of arts in Miami, specifically for Black creators and makers from this day on, and where we are today. What do you see, what do you hope for?
Yeah. Well, there's a reason that Little Haiti is the fastest growing gentrified area in the United States of America, in the world at this point, on the globe. And that has to do with the space. It's Black space, and it's Black spiritual space. And there's a tremendous amount of intelligence and creativity that exists inside of spiritual intelligence. And that spiritual intelligence that exists inside of Blackness, that exists inside of the DNA, is going to surface, like when you go out in the sun and your melanin rises and you get a suntan. Black people get a suntan too, you know. And so the more sun that you get, the more creative you become. And so there's a reason, there's reasoning and justification behind that. So there's a man named Reginald Yates. I don't know if any of you know Mr. Reginald Yates. He lived here in Miami for quite a while. He was a choreographer, dancer, now lives in between Tampa and Ghana and Accra. He said to me one day, you know, Miami is little Africa. Miami in itself, the city of Miami is the entire continent of Africa. You can find every shade, every color, every level of diversity of Blackness inside of this city. And he told me this in like 2000. And he said, watch and see what happens and how it changes and how it shifts, specifically Little Haiti, because it is the hub of Miami. It is the creative center of Miami. So the future of that is Miami, Black Miami, has to maintain its space, and we have to expand the space. And we don't need permission from anyone to take the space. We don't need that. You don't need a dance studio to go out and dance, really, you don't. You have the street out there, you have the beach. There's so many things out here that we can find and ways to create. There's so much inspiration inside of the city. Even the way that we're sitting right now is a level of inspiration. Even this conversation that we're having is a level of inspiration. And that level of inspiration actually comes out of the DNA. It resonates already inside of the body. The only thing that we need to do is really be true to ourselves and who we are and tap into that and go forward. That's what we need to do. Go forward. Without permission. Don't ask permission. Don't ask somebody, can I? Do I have the money? You don't need their dollars to create. Let them come and find you.
Right.
Can I say
Making your
something?
spaces.
Can I say
Yes.
something? Going back to what he said about it being Africa, like sometimes when Miami's one of them cities that it's a one-on-one. You can't get it nowhere. The colorfulness, when you go to the communities and around the neighborhoods, you go to the Porky Bean projects, it's colorful. I have friends from all over the country, from New York and LA or Atlanta. They come down to Miami, they see these colorful buildings, these colorful houses and stuff like that. And it's just like, that's our people, that live in these communities. And it's just seeing people doing murals in the community. That's our people. That's the inspiration. Just cruising around your neighborhood, just seeing a guy that looked like you or a woman that looked like you just doing a mural and just doing it for the love. That's inspiration,
One of the things.
I always say myself that we are not in the south of the United States. We are just north of the Caribbean.
It's true.
It's
To
not.
the
Hold
great
on.
annoyment of everyone.
I agree with that one.
Well, you're still talking Africa, because the
Wait.
Caribbean is African.
Okay, but I will say this
African.
as like a Black Miami history nerd. There is a way in which we speak about Miami when we say it's not really the South that denies that we are in fact in the deep South.
South of the South.
We are in the
denial.
South where lynchings happened.
Yeah.
We are in Miami where the Klan rode through in the 1930s because Black people were registering to vote and held an effigy saying this N-word voted, right? Like, this is the South. This is the South. This is the U.S. South.
Yeah.
And it's the global Black South. It's both. I don't think it's either or. But I think there's a certain erasure that happens around Miami's southern Black roots that says, oh, it's...
All right, I'm sorry. Guys, there's a great conversation happening, center stage. If you can please keep it down towards the back. You guys are getting really loud. Thank you very much. Sorry, I had to do it.
But I do think, Miami being the deep South is important. Like, Billie Holiday would not perform here because it's the deep South. Like, so not talking about that part of it as well, because that's very real. And it's very real that at its very founding, this was the global Black South. Miami was founded by Bahamians and folks who are the descendants of enslaved people from North Carolina and South Carolina. You had Black Cubans coming to Miami as early as the 1930s and 40s and probably before, and hung out and performed in Overtown.
Let's not
Black
forget
Costa
about
Ricans, so like we've always
the
had
Black Seminoles as well.
and Maroons.
Yes.
And Virginia Key, which was likely a maroon spot. So, like, I think it's important to embrace all of the versions of Blackness that exist here, but also to recognize that this is in fact the Deep South and comes with all of the vestiges of the Deep South.
Can I ask all you guys this for 1 second? How come we don't, certain people don't know the history? I look at your page all the time, and it's crazy because the history
Talking
that
about
come
Black
out.
Miami-Dade.
It's crazy because the knowledge I get, I learn. I'm young, so it's like still learning the Black Miami and the artifacts in Miami. Like, how come that we don't have that? Like, how come we don't have our own museum? Like, I feel like we should have that.
That's
Well,
what this
well,
space is about.
That's where we're going.
That's what this
That's where
is
we're going.
about.
That's where
But I
Marilyn-
think the difficult issue, though, to really address is our economic situation is not good. And, to have institutions like MoCAAD is going to require money. And I can tell you as a art dealer, Miami is not an easy place to operate. I just had a major Purvis Young show in Fort Lauderdale, right? I sold 8 pieces. One of them came from Miami. It was DC and New York. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I think that's an issue we're going to have to confront with this museum, because, what Marilyn's doing is very important, but sustainability is a major issue. I think we have to really also start to move into the global arena to get support, because we've become a very important international city. When Basel comes, there are a lot of Africans who come also. This year I went to a panel discussion at the Lowe's on the beach, and it was being organized by a very prominent Nigerian woman, right, who's talking about the role of art in the development of Black people globally. So I think we're going to have to start making more of those connections to find pathways to economic liberation. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, absolutely. I think economics, politics, the things that are maybe not fun or sexy are the real things that we need to think about. So just to put it on your radar, if you don't know, the Little Haiti Cultural Complex, the Caribbean Marketplace, the Little Haiti Cultural Center next door, this entire facility is a municipal facility. That means it is part of the city of Miami. So your tax dollars are contributing and helping support this place. You, as citizens of this city and county, have a vested interest in this place, right? So think about your power and agency as citizens as well. And then when it comes to economics, right? These are things we have to think about. That connects directly what we talked about in terms of gentrifying in Little Haiti and all over Miami, especially as Miami is changing within the last couple years with the pandemic, more people moving here. Now we're becoming like this crypto / the new tech hub of the United States. So a lot of interesting things are happening, a lot of opportunities, but there's also some challenges in there, right? So now it's time to hear from you. You've heard us talk about different things, but really the conversation starts with you now. And I see a lot of artists in the house. Shout out to all of you. Thank you for coming. Let's get some questions going. And everyone on YouTube that's watching, thank you so much for joining us. I'm not sure how those questions can be maybe shared with us as well, but I think we'll have somebody sharing them. So, all right, let's get going with some mics in the audience, yeah?
Thank you very much. Hello, okay.
Check.
So much sound, there's a lot of things happening. But we're gonna move into the Q&A portion. We have some people on Zoom who are gonna be sending in their questions. Luz is going to operate or moderate those questions. What I'd like to do now moving forward is I'm gonna have a volunteer come up. Can I get, no, excuse me, yes. And if you have a question, raise your hand, we'll give you the mic so that you can speak, and then the panelists will answer your questions. I want you to pass.
Thank you. Hi. Thanks everyone for this panel and very interesting discussion. I'm an Arab American, just for introduction, and so I very much understand how sometimes there's different narratives that are spoken about your people that art, I think, is an amazing mechanism to address. So my question for you is, I find myself constantly looking for other ways to find out artistic, historical narratives about a people by the people about which it's being discussed. So what, in your opinions, are the best platforms, whether news or artists, or obviously with all the new forms of social media, to which these stories can be told through the perspectives of the people that people want to talk about? So whether it's art, whether it's writing, whether it's music. I know maybe it's a large question, but because we have things from Instagram to things like this, which are very different, both important, how do you feel is a great way to get the message across, and what kinds of actors, whether museums, newspapers, journalists, artists, can be involved to help and promote that? Thank you.
All right, I'll try to to that. I definitely think that we're living in the age of communication, right? So what's true with all the platforms that exist on social media, from YouTube to Twitter to Instagram to Clubhouse, we can easily communicate those ideas, right? Maybe what we need to do as an art community is to think maybe the journalists who are involved in the spreading of the word might want to think about making sure that we collaborate the independent voices that are coming out of Miami in the arts, right? Because for one, what I do on Clubhouse is very important, and I could always use a bigger audience, you know, because, and as I said, you know, that is a platform that allows you to speak to the entire world, right? And Miami is really, and I can say this as a global traveler, is a real special place. We live in a real special place, culturally and geographically. So we have a lot to share, and obviously the world loves us. You see what happens with Basel, right? Everyone loves Miami, right?
Can we shout out Nadege's site and project really quick? Come on, Nadege,
Yeah,
don't be
we
shy.
hear that.
Don't be shy.
I am a fan.
I'm gonna put you on blast for
Total fan.
that. Tell us what you do.
I'm a writer. I run the @BlackMiamiDade page on Instagram, and it is a page that gives snapshots of Miami's history from late 1800s, its founding, to about the 1990s-ish. But really talking about Miami history, I do a lot of archival research. I do a lot of personal projects on Black Miami. So the site is my offering back to a community that I love and that loves me back. So it's all about Black Miami history. And there's a website coming soon with coloring pages. Black Miami Dade, @BlackMiamiDade on Instagram.
And it's very important to have this kind of research done, which is, you know, like not that usual, because, you know, like you don't find it. There's not a book that you can go to, you know, like that would tell you the history of Black Miami.
There is a book, actually.
There is?
It's
What is that
called
book called?
Black Miami in the 20th Century.
Marvin
was
Dunn,
it
Marvin
published?
Dunn,
Dr. Dunn.
Marvin
When
Dunn,
was it
Marvin
published?
Dunn.
In the early 2000s.
Yes.
There are several. A World More Concrete by N.Z.B. Connolly. South of the South is a book about the connections between Black and Jewish alliances around desegregating Miami. You have an autobiography by Athalie Range called Remembrance, which is all about her life in Coconut Grove. I'll put a whole reading list together, but there is information.
And if you
there.
Google the Black arts in Miami,
And then
you'll
you have the
see
Black Archives.
there's
and we
a
have
lot of information.
All
that'll
the
come out.
reasons to follow Nadege.
But
Yeah.
wait 1 second. I think to answer your question as well, just put your energy into your art. That's the best way you can express yourself. Let the, you know, all the stuff that come with it, you know, getting it out there. That's not what you do it for. You know what I'm saying? You do it for the inner you. You know what I'm saying? You're not trying to please nobody. You're trying to express your emotions to your art. That's the key thing about art. And I feel like that's what people fail to realize. Get back to the basics and worry about the art and express your emotions into your art.
And don't be afraid to use the library system. As a child of
Best
the Miami-Dade
resources.
Public Library System, I will be a Miami-Dade Public Library System influencer if they let me. But the librarians are dope, and any questions you have, they will answer your questions. The microfiche is real if you want to dig through archives. They actually have quite a decent holding of Purvis Young's work by the Miami-Dade Public Library System, and they also have a pretty decent art holding as well. So if you're interested in looking at like art history in Miami in an accessible way, the library system is an amazing resource, and they will talk to you and answer your questions and help you find books and information and readings to go deeper still.
And it's all free.
Hi everyone. My name is Luz Estrella Cruz, and I'm an intern for Miami MoCAAD. And I have the pleasure of fielding some online questions to our panel. And so, anyone who would like to answer, I have 2 questions. How have other Black artists and art mediums inspired your artwork? And what advice would you give to emerging Black artists?
Can I answer that? So that's a great question, and especially for me as a choreographer, performer, dancer coming from that realm, I've actually been exploring this idea of how dance is actually a visual art. Yes, it's a performance art, but it's
Ashe.
also a visual art.
Ashe.
Because without the physical body moving around in space, you don't have anything, and it's something optic. So it's also a historical narrative because we carry the history and culture of groups of people inside of the body. And you're able to trace certain things about yourselves and about your DNA, about your ancestral lineage, based on the rhythms and the ways in which you move. So I'm always inspired by visual art, but also exploring the idea of the moving body as a visual art form. You mentioned Picasso, and Picasso created this thing called Cubism. But Cubism actually comes out of Burkina Faso, and it's called break shadow art. And it's the moving body being in the reflection of the sun. And that is a visual art, and that's where his information actually came from. But of course, that part of the history has been erased and removed, and no one's actually having that conversation of break shadow art and the moving body catching light and catching darkness to create shape and form in space, which is what visual art is.
Ashe.
Asheo.
Okay, let's hear some more questions. Why did you all come here tonight? What did you want to hear?
There was two parts.
There's two parts.
The other
Okay.
side of the question is
who
any
inspires?
advice for an emerging Black artist,
Okay,
young artist?
let's go.
Like I said before, my bad. You know, the best inspiration is life. You know, as cliche as it might sound, but life, sometimes I just be cruising down. The littlest things could inspire you. I'd be cruising down 62nd Street, 54th Street, and just getting inspired. You know, sometimes I go to the beach and just get inspired by the ocean, just meditate by the ocean. So I would say just apply, like even your family could inspire you. But like my grandma inspires me every day. She does sewing. You know, I don't even sew, but that inspires me. She's been doing that as a kid, you know. So I would say just your everyday life has to inspire you. You know, whether it's the lowest, because that's what's going to get you up to where you need to be at, or when you're in your highest, you know, use that as your inspiration. Use your life and your everyday life as your inspiration. And the littlest things, whether you just riding in your car or walking down the street or going to the beach, you know. So, yeah.
Thank you.
We have a question right there.
We actually have some more questions from online.
Okay, but we also have a question right down the row from you. Raise your hand. I saw right there.
I'm curious, where do we, I would say this is more for the panel and everyone, and my question is based more about where do we take responsibility for the state of not only the art market, our communities, everything that is part of our lives. And I ask this because recently I had a debate with some friends, a debate about bootstrap. And
About what?
and I do understand that there are certain limits that we do have in the societies in which we are not the leading financial figures, politics, or what have you. But if we look at the United States historically, what allowed us to make progress is that sense of bootstrap. You know, the idea of we have to make it happen no matter what. We have to always do the work. And I say this simply because we have countless examples, like the words, such words as, it's escaping me, but when gentrification. I kind of laugh at that because it's an example where we see buildings that have been, spaces that have been sitting empty and dormant for decades. And when someone sees an opportunity to make use of it, we get upset. So where do we take responsibility for what we're doing or not doing? And I would also use that to also look at what the art market itself is dictating. Because there's also a sense of freedom that we haven't really explored because are we the ones also collecting our own works?
That's a good question.
You know, do we have a vested interest in building our own collections, our own institutions? And so I guess it's all kind of connected. I just wanted you guys to respond to that.
I'll respond to the first part. So bootstraps means you have boots. Not everyone have boots. It does matter though. It really does. But what I am saying though, hold on. So I think that's one. And that does not negate the fact that people have personal responsibility, but we also need to talk about the structural issues because there are plenty of people who have done their absolute best, but can't afford to buy a home in Miami and are from here. The Color of Wealth report, which came out by the Kirwan Institute about 2 years ago, talked about the economic disparities in Miami-Dade. And it is actually the first report that breaks down wealth by not just race, but also ethnicity. And it is the case in Miami-Dade that if you are Black, regardless of what kind of Black you are, it is very high. You are least likely to be able to buy a home. Your income outcome, your economic outcome here is significantly less than if you are white or white passing. And to be clear, Black does not just mean self-identifying, it is how you're perceived in Miami. So you may not self-identify as Black, but the darker your skin is here in Miami, there's a direct correlation between your economic capabilities. It is very real in Miami, which is a tourism town, that most of our economy in Miami is hospitality-based, which is also low wages. And so you might have your bootstraps on and you want to work really hard, but it is very real that you are a school teacher in Miami-Dade County making $42,000 a year and have to live at home with your parent and your children and your husband because you cannot afford housing here. It is very real in Miami that the person who works at Jackson Memorial Hospital as the X-ray tech, the park and recreation folks, some of the individuals who work for the city of Miami in here right now earn less than $42,000 a year in a city where rent is upwards of $1,800 for a one-bedroom. And so Miami is also, according to studies by FIU Center of Urban Studies and a number of other economic studies, and this is all based on facts, cost burden. Most people in Miami pay more than a third of their income on rent alone. That does not take into account food, it does not take into account childcare. Childcare in Miami is the same cost as mortgage if you have young children. So it is very possible that if you have young children in Miami in particular, you are paying upwards of $800 a month for childcare and housing. And so I think it is very real that as we talk about aspirational things around access, that we also have to understand the economic realities of the space that we are in and how much people make here that will give you access to those higher spaces, which is why you see folks like the tech bros coming to Miami because cost of living is cheaper for them here based off of their income in San Francisco. But not based off of the income here. Most of our economy in Miami-Dade is hospitality-based. Our largest employers in Miami-Dade County are Miami-Dade County Public School System. Maybe you work for Jackson Health System, but these are some of our larger industries in Miami, which don't pay well. And so the reality of the economy of Miami, in particular for people of color who have built this space and who are the labor of this space and keep the space running, is also one that is built on inequality. But I'll let someone else take the second question. I'm happy to have a discussion further, but we are going to move on so we can take some more questions.
And I just want to follow up with that to say that is where you have to become involved in politics. Both are city and county commissioners across the board. They are elected by a few thousand voters every voting cycle. So think about the power your votes have. Think about who represents you in the city and the county district offices and go down and make your voice heard. What are the things that you need? What does equitable wages and rent control look like here in our county and city? So, no, it's... Ooh, that's a whole nother panel. That's a whole nother panel.
Next question. Oh, Lord.
Personal issues in which I had discussions dealing with the fact that I can't rely on the friendliness of others, because when it comes to violence, I have the disability has no say-so out there. And so, based on that, I cannot ever make excuses for anything. And the reason why I keep on pointing that out is because at some point, yes, there are structures that are not favorable to us, but there's at some point in which we have to say, we have to figure out how to get beyond it. And the most important reason why I push the whole bootstrap issue is, you know why? It's because we can do it. And every time I hear arguments against it, it's because saying that we're not capable of it. We're capable, but every time I'm hearing their issues, their impediments, it's saying that we're not capable of finding solutions. I think that we can, and every time I hear impediments, it's saying that we're not capable of resolving the issue.
I think we are capable, and I'd like to hear from some
Yeah.
more people on
You know,
the panel.
And to be clear, that's why we're having this panel, because we
Yeah, yeah.
know
Well,
we are
see,
capable.
one of the things I definitely believe in is the power of art to transform our communities, right?
Yes.
I talk about Black Renaissance all the time. You know, what does that mean to me? It means that I understand that as a people of African descent, we come from a history and legacy of achievement and excellence, right? The situation we're going through now is we're still responding to the trauma of slavery, right? And colonialism, if you want to think about it globally, right? So what I think is true is that art is a form of being that allows us to get into our divinity, right? In a way that creates solutions, because that's what I think science comes from art. It's all about the imagination, right? So when we educate our kids, I think it's very important to deal with art, right? I'm also realistic. I have a foundation that deals with STREAM education in Africa, right? Science, technology, education, reading, art, and math, I think are important. But I think the art thing is critically important because we're dealing with some deep healing issues that we have to go through, right?
Say that again?
We're dealing with some deep healing issues. You know, we've been traumatized. So the art thing, I think, gives us the possibility of using our imagination. And as I said, it's going to take a renaissance, right? A rebirth for Black people to get out of the conditions that we're in. Even when you look at it in the real, economics is really a major impediment, right? But as I said, as we become more aware of who we are, and that's what that you do, that's the work you do, right? And you do, is I think you elevate the consciousness of Black people through the arts, and they see possibilities, and they feel less burdened by the tremendous challenge that we have to even survive in a system like this.
Artists try to complicate the narrative. That's all we do. We just make it more complex so that people realize, you know.
We can take a few more questions.
Yes, hi, how are you? I'm over here. I am Councilman Joe Brown, and I wanted to respond to the young man right here who said that he wanted to pick himself up from the bootstraps. Not only do we have talent and resources, not only can we do things, but we will do things. So we're having another symposium like this. I'm sponsoring the first Black Jazz Art and Authors Festival in Coconut Grove on February 26th. And what we're going to do is show a collaboration citywide, and a collaboration of people who will take responsibility of their circumstance, take action and do something. There's a story when I was a young man that someone told me about a young boy who in high school walked past a porch that had a dog and an old man sitting on it. And every day from school he walked by this porch and the dog would be whining and complaining. So junior year, senior year, he graduates and he builds the courage up and he says, "Sir, I've been walking by this porch for 4 years and I've been hearing your dog complain and whine. What is wrong with your dog?" He said, "The dog is sitting on a nail." He said, "Why won't the dog move?" He said, because it doesn't hurt them enough to move, it just hurts them enough to complain. So what we're going to do is stop complaining and start acting and start taking control of your environment. And as a council person, they're a little mad at me because I'm not asking permission to do certain things. We're going to let them know what we're doing. We're going to let them know what our mission is. We're going to not ask permission, but we're going to let them put them on notice of what we're doing. Okay, so for you, young man who is here, and everyone else who's here, there are people who are action-oriented, and we have the power to do whatever we want to do. You simply take the T off of can't, and it means can, right? So please, if anybody has any issues or concerns, you know, my name again is Councilman Joe Brown. My partner here is Elliot Duran. He's the upcoming president of the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber is about business. The council is about elected politicians. We should hold everybody accountable. I want everybody in here to hold me personally accountable, because constructive criticism is what we all need, right? And I'm not afraid of criticism. That's how we grow, right? So with that being said, again, look forward to the Jazz, Art, and Author Festival you hear coming up. I'm going to let this young man talk about the Chamber. I appreciate this event. You are all beautiful. This young lady over here, I want you to see this artist over here.
Now give it to the question.
But we just have questions right now. So if so we're taking questions. And I also just want to add that acknowledging structural inequalities doesn't mean that we're not doing stuff or that we can't do stuff. That's not what it means. It means there are structural inequalities, and we still fight against those, and we still create, and we still exist, and we still smile, and we still are dope as hell, because Miami has always been dope, and we will always create. So it doesn't negate that at all. Yes. But go ahead, next question.
Can I say something to that really quickly? One of the things that you have to, that the general public sometimes has misconceptions about when it comes to an artist is that we manifest daily. We don't just think about the thing, we do the thing, we make it happen. And it is a visual thing that you can actually feel, see, touch, it happens, and it changes lives. So it's not an idea of we're thinking about something and we're complaining about something. We actually think about something, envision it, create a structure to manifest it, and then we produce it and it happens. That takes a lot of boots, souls, dirt. I mean, things happen, and that information changes lives. So the sustainability and structure and implementation and manifestation of art in itself speaks to who we are, who we were in the past, who we are in the present, and where we're going in the future, because it will remain.
Yes. Thank you. We have one last question left for the panel before we go and close our event. But as Miami rapidly changes, what does the future of Black Miami look like, and what do you guys envision it to be?
We kind of answered that, but we can answer it again, right? Huh?
MoCAAD.
That's right.
MoCAAD. Bring it on.
The future of Black Miami. I think it's sitting up here on the stage. It's sitting out there in the audience. We are the future of Black Miami, all of us here tonight. So it looks like whatever we want it to be, whatever we're willing to do to make it the world we're trying to live in, right? So what are some of the things that I want to see? I want to see a place that supports affordable living for everyone. I want to see places like this, like MoCAAD, that are supported by our community, that have received investment from all of us, from our governments. I want to see more cyclical support, right? We are investing in each other, keeping the money within our communities, supporting each other first. Those are some of the things that I hope to see in the future as a mother, as an educator, as an artist. That's what I hope for.
Ashe, I'll second that emotion, for sure, because we have to be optimistic. Yes. This life is a gift, all right? So don't make them steal your joy. You know what I mean? Just make sure you come with it strong. You know what I mean? Because especially if you're black, you're original, and it means you're spiritually very powerful. So you can overcome anything.
Hi, I have a question. My name is Daniela. I'm a local architect and artist. And this is kind of a nod to the bootstraps conversation, because one of my takeaways, I went to FIU, I'm a graduate of their architecture program. One of my takeaways in my art history classes was the decentralization of black work. I went through all these classes and could only list a few black names. And so my takeaway when I translate the erasure of blackness inside of the art historical narrative to the other narratives that America sells its people, a bootstraps narrative, right? That I can just pull myself up by my bootstraps, but what if the narrative isn't there to begin with? What if the legacy is one of elimination and erasure? So where do black people begin in that conversation?
You rewrite it. You just rewrite it.
Create your narrative.
I guess that wasn't a question, but
You have to rewrite it. Point. There's no way to escape it. It was erased. You make sure that it's like under the light for everyone to see.
All right, last question by The Surge, a black Miami legend.
Thank you. Serge Toussaint, local artist since 1994. You guys see my work pretty much everywhere you go. Little dollar signs. Some of y'all probably was children, kids going to high school. It was just a pleasure for me to come. I came late, but it was just a pleasure for me to come and mingle with some celebrity artists. His brother here, Mr. Carrie, and so on that I don't really know. It just makes me feel good as a local artist that I really think that the art world is really is getting up there. You know what I mean? It was just a pleasure for me to come here and just to say that, hey, let's work together. Once again, my name is Serge Toussaint. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and I've been around since 1994.
And he has a book in the library.
And I have a book, and my name is in the Wikipedia. What?
Serge is a Miami legend.
One of the first Haitian men in the Wikipedia.
All right,
Thank you guys. It's a pleasure for me to come here and
thank you, Serge. That was a beautiful ending comment. Thank you so much.
Yes. All right. Okay, so thank you, everyone. We are going to have a tour in the gallery that's across the courtyard. Two of our artists that are featured in the exhibition are here tonight, Dini Zulu Jean Tinney and Michelle Grant Murray. So thank you. They have a wealth of knowledge to share with you. And I believe Marilyn is going to close us out with today's program. So thank you, Marilyn from MoCAAD.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing your evening with us. The Miami Museum of Contemporary Art of the African Diaspora and the Little Haiti Cultural Center came together to bring this evening for you. And we thank the Little Haiti Cultural Center for making a space for us, for engaging in this collaboration. And we have lots of applause and thumbs up for this fantastic panel. We have amazing co-moderators, Marie Vickles and Nadege Green. We have amazing art figures in our community. Ludlow Bailey, who's been in the trenches for decades. Aaron Jackson, the young Turk, the new kid on the block, but he has a lot to say and a lot for us to learn with him about the history of Miami. And we have Edouard Duval Carrie, who is one of my favorite artists from way, way, way back. And it's such a pleasure to have him here tonight. And we have Michelle Grant Murray, and thank you so much for that history for reminding us of what we don't know, and there's so much more that we don't know. What we heard tonight, what we had tonight was a conversation where our panel, our moderators, revealed challenges that testified to the courage, the creativity, the resourcefulness, and the resilience that brought us here today. There's so much from their insights and observations that we have learned this evening that probed us into understanding more. We could go on and on this evening, but I want to close out by thanking, again, the Little Haiti Cultural Center. Sandy Dorsonville, please come out. She's been working. And Sandy, please say a few words.
Thank you, everyone, for just listening and participating so actively. We welcome you all to the Little Haiti Cultural Center, to Little Haiti, to the city of Miami. And of course, we welcome you back to the Caribbean Marketplace Thursday through Sunday from now, and we hopefully till the end of time. We want you to support our vendors. Please have some great pizza from Simply Good, have a drink at the bar, but more importantly, support MoCAAD. They are doing great work. I'm biased. I went to Howard. I was a history major. I love all things blackity black, black, black. So, support the work that they're doing, participate in these conversations, log on to their website, become their friend on social media, because these are the type of conversations that lead to these type of spaces. Our space would not exist if it wasn't for these artists producing works that celebrate culture in all types of spaces. So thank you so much for coming out. We have a wonderful performance coming up from the NSL, the Nancy Saint-Léger Dance Ensemble, some wonderful Haitian drummers. So stick around. Please follow our resident curator, Marie Vickles, to our art gallery, and also see this performance here with the NSL Dance Ensemble. Thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening. Thank you, everyone, for being out here, and we appreciate you so much.
Thank you, thank you. And just one more thing. When you came in, you saw a table for voter registration.
Yes, I almost forgot.
You saw a table that made it easy for us to get involved, to get engaged. And I want to thank the Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated for bringing voter registration to our event so that it's easy for everybody. No one who is not registered to vote should leave here without registering. I want to thank our museum working member, Michelle Johnson, who is also a member of Zeta Phi Beta sorority, for being such an extraordinary force behind the scenes to make Miami MoCAAD possible. And I want to thank Corbin Graves, who is our Director of Interactive Media. Where's Corbin? He's the man behind the scenes that has made all of this happen, or some of this happen. He's behind me. And I want to also thank our amazing interns. You see Luz Estrella Cruz, Christian Allen, Ashley Caleb, Charlie Farrell. They are the people who are behind the scenes that make Miami MoCAAD live. And I want to thank our supporters and funders, the Knight Foundation, and the Miami-Dade County government. Thank you. Yes, indeed. So now, for all of the art lovers in the room, please join Marie Vickles for a tour of the art that is on exhibit at the Little Haiti Cultural Center. And thanks again for joining us this evening. We need a picture. We need a picture. Thank you.